Coming up, what an excellent day for Le Plume de ma Tante. Well, howdy folks, and welcome to Minute 92 of the Exorcist Minute, a show where we endeavor to examine, extrapolate, and excavate The Exorcist, minute by terrifying minute. My name is Lester Ryan Clark.
And I'm Keenan Diaz.
And I'm Father David Mowry.
And we'll be your holy guides on this journey through what some have called the scariest movie of all time. And folks, yes, that voice you heard was Father David Mowry. We are so happy to have him with us again. Welcome back, Father David.
I'm really happy to be here. Thanks so much. I brought my 1970s tape recorder with me in order to record my contribution to the show. So I'll mail the reel to you after we're done recording.
You sound marvelous, I'm sure.
This is great.
We'll find out in a couple of months.
Yes.
I believe you sound great.
All right. Okay, folks. So our minute begins with Captain Howdy saying, "It would bring us together."
And it ends with him saying, "What's that?"
I'm sorry.
Mercedes, move over.
Yeah. That caught me by surprise. That's our podcast, Howdy. It's like, oh, yeah. But I love it. I'm glad he's back with us. Yes, folks, we are back in this room. This is Damien's second visit with Captain Howdy, and he has a plan. Damien, I mean, not Cap. Well, he has a plan too. They both have plans, and we're gonna see who outsmarts who or whom.
Thank you.
In a second. It's a knockdown, drag-out battle of wits. Are they playing chess or Russian roulette, or are they playing the much-talked-about game Mousetrap by Hasbro?
Mom, can we not play Mousetrap, please? Can't we just do Bible study and go to bed early?
Seriously. Yes. I say much talked about by Carl.
Right, exactly.
At least we think. So stay with us to find out. That's gonna be the most radio showy intro I've ever done. What's wrong with me? Am I possessed?
Only took 92 minutes, but we broke him last week.
There we go. Yeah, we got it.
Exactly.
Yep. Yeah. Or am I just excited to talk about this minute? Folks, you are in luck because we have another reading. We're going to continue where we left off in the book. So here we go. A reading from the book of Blatty. But wouldn't that drive you out of Reagan? The demon put its head back, cackling maniacally, then broke off. It would bring us together. You and Reagan. You and us, my good friend, croaked the demon. You and us. Garrus stared. At the back of his neck he felt hands, icy cold, lightly touching, and then gone. Caused by fear, he concluded. Fear? Fear of what? Yes, you'll join our little family, Garrus. You see, the trouble with signs in the sky, my dear morsel, is that once having seen them, one has no excuse. Have you noticed how few miracles one hears about lately? Not our fault, Garrus. Don't blame us. We try. Garrus jerked around, his head at a loud, sudden banging. A bureau drawer had popped open, sliding out its entire length. He felt a quick, rising thrill as he watched it abruptly bang shut. There it is! And then, as suddenly, the emotion dropped away like a rotted chunk of bark from a tree. Psychokinesis. Garrus heard chuckling. He glanced back to Reagan. How pleasant it is to chat with you, Garrus, said the demon, grinning. I feel free, like a wanton. I spread my great wings. In fact, even my telling you this will serve only to increase your damnation, my doctor, my dear, inglorious physician. You did that? You made the dresser drawer move just now? The demon wasn't listening. It had glanced toward the door, toward the sound of someone rapidly approaching down the hall, and now its features turned to those of the other personality. Damned butchering bastard! It shrieked in the hoarse British-accented voice. Hunting Hun! Through the door came Carl, moving swiftly with the tape recorder, setting it down by the bed, eyes averted, and then quickly retreating from the room. Out, Himmler! Out of my sight! Go and visit your club-footed daughter! Bring her sauerkraut and heroin, Thorndyke! She will love it! She will— Gone. Carl was gone. And now, abruptly, the thing within Reagan was cordial, watching Garrus as the priest quickly set up the tape recorder, looked for an outlet, plugged it in, threaded tape. Oh, yes, hello, what's up? Are we going to record something, Padre? How fun. Oh, I do love to play act, you know. Oh, immensely. I'm Damien Garrus, said the priest as he worked. And who are you? Are we asking for my credits now, ducks? Damn cheeky of you, wouldn't you say? It giggled. I was Puck in the junior class play. It glanced around. Where's a drink, incidentally? I'm parched. The priest placed the microphone gently on the nightstand. If you tell me your name, I'll try to find one. Oh, yes, of course, it responded with a cackle of amusement. And then drink it yourself, I suppose. As he pushed the record button, Karis answered. Tell me your name. Fucking plunderer! And then promptly disappeared and was replaced by the demon. And what are we doing now, Karis? Recording our little conversation. Karis straightened, stared. Then he pulled up a chair beside the bed and sat down. Do you mind? He responded. Not at all, croaked the demon. I've always rather liked infernal engines. Abruptly, a strong, new stench assailed Karis. It was an odor like sauerkraut, Karis. Have you noticed? It does smell like sauerkraut, the Jesuit marveled. It seemed to be emanating from the bed, from Reagan's body. Then it was gone, replaced by the putrid stench of before. Karis frowned. Did I imagine it? Autosuggestion? He thought of the holy water. Now? No, save it. Get more of the speech pattern. To whom was I speaking before? He asked. Merely one of the family, Karis. A demon? You give too much credit. How so? The word demon means wise one. He is stupid. The Jesuit grew taut. In what language does demon mean wise one? In Greek. You speak Greek? Very fluently. One of the signs, Karis thought with excitement. Speaking in an unknown tongue. It was more than he'd hoped for. Pos eknogas hoti presbyteros aimi? He quickly inquired in classical Greek. I'm not in the mood, Karis. Oh, then you cannot. I am not in the mood. Disappointment, Karis brooded. You made the dresser drawer come sliding out? He inquired. Most assuredly. Very impressive, Karis nodded. You're certainly a very powerful demon. I am. I was wondering if you'd do it again. Yes, in time. Do it now, please. I'd really like to see it. In time. Why not now? We must give you some reason for doubt, it croaked. Some. Just enough to ensure the final outcome. It put back its head in a chuckle of malice. How novel to attack through the truth. What joy. Icy hands lightly touching at his neck. Karis stared. Why the fear again? Fear? Was it fear? No, not fear, said the demon. It was grinning. That was me. Hands gone now. Karis frowned, felt new wonder, chipped it down. Telepathic. Or is she? Find out. Find out now. Can you tell me what I'm thinking right now? Your thoughts are too dull to entertain. Then you can't read my mind. You may have it as you wish. As you wish. Try the holy water? Now? He heard the squeaking of the tape recorder mechanism. No, just keep digging. Get more of a sampling of the speech. You're a fascinating person, said Karis. Reagan sneered. Oh no, really, said Karis. I'd like to know more about your background. You've never told me who you are, for example. A devil, rumbled the demon. Yes, I know, but which devil? What's your name? Ah, now, what's in a name, Karis? Never mind my name. Call me Howdy, if you find it more comfortable. Oh, yes, Captain Howdy, Karis nodded. Reagan's friend. Her very close friend. Oh, really? Indeed. But then why do you torment her? Because I am her friend. The piglet likes it. She likes it? She adores it. But why? Ask her. Would you allow her to answer? No. Well, then what would be the point in my asking? None. The demon's eyes glinted spite. Who's the person I was speaking to earlier? Asked Karis. Oh, you asked me that. I know, but you never gave an answer. Just another good friend of the sweet honey piglet, dear Karis. May I speak to him? No. He is busy with your mother. She is sucking his cock to the bristles, Karis. To the root. It chuckled softly, and then added, Marvelous tongue, your mother. Good mouth. It was gleaming at him mockingly, and Karis felt a rage sweeping through him, a tremor of hatred that the priest quickly realized with a start was directed not at Reagan, but at the demon. The demon! What the hell is the matter with you, Karis? The Jesuit gripped calm by its edges, breathed deep, and then stood up and slipped the vial of water from the pocket of his shirt. He uncorked it. The demon looked wary. What is that?
Yeah, you're not holding back the swearing and the reading when we have our guests here, Lester. Yeah. I'm noticing that. Didn't notice that as we were getting ready, but now...
Oh, sorry, I just got back from the bathroom. Did I miss anything?
I may cut that out in the actual reading.
Well, we're on our best behavior so fast. In our own voices, but yeah,
right.
But that's literature. This is literature, folks.
Literature. This is art.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah. Like, what do you guys think of this? Again, just a little bit of a difference here. Some more tete-a-tete we got going on between Howdy and Karis.
The one line that really jumped out at me was, "We must give you some reason for doubt, just enough to assure the final outcome, and then how novel to attack through the truth."
Yes.
And I thought that was such a well-crafted line because, of course, the most dangerous lie is one that's partially true. Mm-hmm. And a totally outrageous lie is, of course, completely unbelievable. My dog ate my homework. Like, but you don't have a dog. So, it's just, that's not going to really cut the mustard. Mm-hmm. The Christian tradition has always presented evil spirits as liars. And Jesus himself in the Gospel of John refers to Satan as a liar and the father of lies. Mm-hmm. And in presenting the unclean spirits in the course of the Gospels, one of the things that's consistent about their appearance in Jesus' exorcism ministry is that the evil spirits know who Jesus really is. I know who you are, the Holy One of God, says one of the unclean spirits, which is true. But why speak that out loud? There's part of it is a theological point that the unclean spirits recognize who Jesus really is, that the unclean spirits are quicker to believe than the human beings around Jesus. Mm-hmm. But there's also an attempt by the unclean spirits to control, because like we get in the scene here, this unclean spirit is hesitant to give its real name because there's power in names spiritually. Yes. Mm-hmm. And so in the Gospels, where the unclean spirits try to name Jesus as he actually is, they expect that to have some kind of power, but you have no power over God. That's not how this works, because God is God. God is the origin of all power, so there's nothing that can control him, and so it is with Jesus. But here, there's this use of the truth, of naming things as they actually are by the unclean spirit to eat at Karis. And even the revelation to say out loud how novel to attack through the truth is part of the game, because now, is that a lie or is it telling the truth? Now I don't know what to believe.
Yes.
I like what we're doing here, comparing the novel to the book. I think it's really interesting that we get to do that. And a lot of times when I talk to students of mine or people who are, film fans, right, there's a tendency to want to pick one format over the other, right? The book is always better, or that sort of thought. And I like here how there are things in the book that you just cannot do in a movie. So Blatty's idea of what fear feels like to Karis is being cold hands grasping for him. Again, that would be useless for Blatty to try to put into words in the screenplay, useless for Friedkin to try to overemphasize that, right? And it's just perfect in the book. I have not heard that metaphor or that imagery before. And it is not only like, it's that sense of cold that you can't have in a movie, but also these hands are, fear feels like hands reaching out to him for help rather than for to torture him, right? Is that sort of what you get from that, Lester?
Well, I got something a little bit different. I got just like an icy touch. Like if somebody had submerged their own hand into some ice water and then touched the back of your neck.
Right. But to bother you, to be a jerk about it.
That's how I read it. That's how or maybe I think the closer reading I got was like an embrace. Like your emotions kind of embrace you. Like when you get angry, anger kind of holds you. And when you get afraid, fear kind of embraces you. And so it kind of felt like fear was kind of glomming onto him, or caressing the back of his neck.
Yeah, I think that's super interesting because Damien has this problem, right? He doesn't want to be the person that people rely on anymore, right? He doesn't think that he is good enough or strong enough to be a son, a father, a psychiatrist, a scholar, any of those things, right? To be a resource. And so I think that's a really cool way of putting it, that it's like people reaching out for that's why I read it as reaching out for help, I suppose.
I like that interpretation too. As if this is these are the masses of people whom he is responsible for. It's please help us, right?
In that Bellevue scene that you compared to the harrowing of hell, and just these hands reaching out at him.
Yes. And then also just to be seen, in his emotion by the demon, he didn't even say anything about fear. He was thinking, he was like, is that the fear again? Why am I feeling fear? And the demon's like, nope, that was me.
Right.
Ugh. Yeah.
But again, just things that we can't begin to put into visual form in a movie. So
yes.
Yeah. Again, so it's not that the book is worse or better than. These are two really sophisticated pieces of art here, where we get to see that let us say the C word in front of a Catholic priest here on a Sunday, Lester. A Sunday of all days.
I read that so fast, and I didn't even realize. I was like, oh, wait, no, we have a guest today.
No. All right, well, anyways.
Look, I'm a priest, but I'm not deaf.
Well, there you go, yeah. Right?
I have a way of hearing things.
Yes. I didn't say that. I'm just going to start gaslighting like Captain Hardy. No. That wasn't me. No.
It was me. That was the piglet.
That was the, yeah.
Oh, boy. Lester's descent into madness continues.
Continue. Yeah, I'm glad you said continues and not begins. Yeah. All right. Okay. So, let's get into this minute here, folks. And, folks, the first thing we see here in this new cut is what they have done to this room. I love what you've done to this room. Now, the room was mostly in darkness the last time we were here, but now we can see. Yeah, Keenan, it's like you said. It's as if we have turned this room into its own insane asylum, right? Like just as Chris had feared, right? With the removal of all of the broken and breakable things, all of the sharp, pointy things, right? The room looks like something out of a dream. Well, not a dream, like it would be a nightmare, but
right.
Like, folks, we didn't mention it before, but now we get a really good look at this bed. This bed has been parodied and imitated almost as much as the rest of the movie. Keenan, you could say that this bed is a character.
No, the bed is a bed, is what I would say.
I have the sense
characters are characters.
I'm having the sense that I'm stepping into a long-running debate here.
Right.
It feels like mom and dad are fighting, and I'm
are not
uncomfortable.
Characters. Time frames are not characters. Seasons are not characters. Unless we Pixarize them, right? And we give them little emotions, right?
Yeah. Now I'm imagining the Pixar version of The Exorcist.
Yes, exactly. What if Reagan's bed had feelings?
Yes. Oh, Beddy.
I just don't know if I want to be a bed.
Oh, the character would be named William Beddy too.
We have Planchy, we have Pulley, the Pulitzer Prize,
yes.
And now we have Beddy.
Well, you mentioned the insane asylum vibe to all of this, and what I was thinking of is how the room reflects the mental state of the people who are in it observing Regan. So Karras is here in a clinical mode. He's here to investigate and to eliminate things scientifically. So he's going to engage with Captain Howdy in conversation, try and tease out proof. He's going to have his little holy water gambit later on in the minute. And so therefore it's very white, it's stark. To me, this came across as very clinical. The lighting is very flat and even, as if it's like institutional fluorescence all the way throughout. There are very few shadows throughout all this. There's very little mystery to Regan because there's no shadow cast. You can see the vomit stain on her clothes, so she feels very corporeal as she's strapped down to the bed here. And you compare that with when the bed is shaking and Chris is on it, or you have the exorcism scene where everything is dark and it's cold. Here, there's no chill in the air. There's no, Karras has his coat on still, so either that's like his self-protection armor thing, or to make himself feel safe, or it is actually a little chilly, but not cold enough to see the character's breath. So that's what struck me in seeing this scene, just based on the tenor of the conversation here. The room kind of changes based on the kind of the spiritual and mental expectations of the people who are in there with Regan and with Captain Howdy.
Yeah,
love it.
Betty White. Sorry,
you need to
Exorcist Minute.
You need to tell Father David that you were listening to him.
No, I was. I absolutely was.
That this is what we do. Yes.
No, I absolutely was. But and thank you for that description, Father David. That was excellent.
Right. Yeah, but it's interesting. So when we cut into this scene from the previous one, we see a lot of the colors been stripped away, as we're saying, but that vomit just stands out even more green, right?
Yes.
It's one of the few colors we have here. So in these wider shots, it is gray. It's like she's a corpse of some kind, and these yellows that we have don't really help us with anything, right? They don't actually feel like they're providing us any color. And I love the idea of it feeling more fluorescent. When we're dealing with color temperature in film, we tend to say that the most orangey one is tungsten, which that's the color that we have. And then within our practical lighting, we'll go towards fluorescent, which is a little more blue. So it's more yellowish blue. But yeah, so that is the phrase fluorescent is something that cinematographers and gaffers will use for a particular color of temperature that they is sort of one of their stops along the spectrum of color temp.
Yeah. But yeah, folks, like in all the merch that I've seen of this movie, this bed with its like weird cushioned bedposts and its crisscrossing of white straps, right, is always present, right? And of course, like we said, Keenan, diegetically, it's so Reagan doesn't get free and hurt herself on a sharp piece of wood or something, right?
They've been working all week putting all this stuff together. Yeah.
Or Carl working overtime.
Oh yeah.
We say they. It's Carl.
It's Carl. Yeah. We know who someone is. It's Carl.
Yeah. Someone needs to go to the store and get eggs. Right away, madam.
Oh, madam, I wonder if the store's open this late, so I couldn't possibly go.
Well, someone needs to find an all-night market, I guess. Someone is getting too old for this. But yeah, okay. So, but like for us, this bed, it adds this size and mass to like the space, right? For one, it makes Reagan look smaller. Right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
And I also think like part of that is like the emptiness of the room as well. But then also it hit me this time around, Keenan, we've already seen the giant throne-like chair in the hall of the Demon King, right? Back when Reagan was being hypnotized, question mark, right? Mm-hmm. Doesn't this sort of kind of match that aesthetic a little bit? Like it's real and unreal at the same time. It's this weird like German expressionist version of a bed, right? Like except the opposite of German expressionism because like there's no pointy angles or anything, right? Like
there are German expressionist films that are more like in the vein of like we live in a tree that's a house and it is curved and gnarled and that sort of thing. So there like the Golem movie version of the Golem. The scientist lives in a tree house and there's like the wall is made of books and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah. Whatever floats your boat back then. It was the 1920s. It was Germany. It was a time of experimentation.
And I mean, like it also kind of just looks like, I don't know. It looks like if you asked AI to draw a comfy bed, right? And it puts pillows all over the place because it doesn't know what pillows are or where they go, right? Actually, Reagan kind of fits in with the AI art because like it can't do people quite right either.
Right. But that's Betty White. She says, I've never felt at home as a bed. That's what my father wants me to do because of generational trauma. And I just don't know what I want to be doing with my life.
Don't give these ideas away for free, Keenan. Come on. Pixar's desperate right now.
Yeah. They are desperate.
Someone's listening to the Exorcist Minute. They're like, guys.
Someone is taking notes about this.
Yes.
Someone will make millions.
But yeah, folks, so our last minute ended with Howdy saying, what an excellent day for an exorcism, and Karras being a little puzzled by this. So he asks, wouldn't that drive you out of Reagan? And our minute today starts with Howdy saying, it would bring us together, another iconic line from this film. Now, as he's saying this, Karras is making his way over to the bed. We realize now that thing on the floor was not a mini stovetop, unfortunately. I'm slightly disappointed. I was hoping it was going to be like an excellent day for eggs in a basket. But no, it's a tape recorder. And now Karras is placing the microphone on the bed near Reagan. And as he does so, he responds to her saying, Captain Howdy responds and he says, it would bring us together. And Karras says, you and Reagan. So he's back on track. He's humoring this sick little girl, sort of guiding her safely through this fantasy. Is that how it feels? Like I'm going to let her talk me through this until she gets to a dead end and maybe opens up about what's really bothering her. What do you guys think?
Well, I think it's some good talk therapy kind of stuff where it's presenting some active listening. Like, I heard you say they're bringing the you together. Like, tell me more about who the us is, and presenting you and Reagan, and that allows the Captain Howdy to continue the conversation. But again, it's Karras leaning too much into his experience as a psychologist when what Reagan really needs is a priest. And so he's being responsive and reactive. And what's needed ultimately, as the text of the movie is going to present, is the authority of a priest that Father Marin is going to spur Karras to do later on.
I like that.
Yes, I do too. If if this really were a sick little girl, Karis would be doing a really, really great job.
Yeah.
But yeah, unfortunately, he's not playing the game he thinks he is. So yeah, and then her response here surprises him a little bit. Howdy says, "You and us." Now, what do we take that to mean? We can see that it shakes Karis, but before reading the book, I didn't quite understand. I thought maybe he was saying like something like enemies in battle share an intimate bond, almost like brothers in arms, but the opposite. Like when he says it'll bring you and us together, what does he mean?
It's so hard now to read that line with the benefit of seeing it for the first time, right? I don't know how to put myself back in that space rather than seeing it now. Like, oh, this is his plan all the time is to get into Damien, right? Yeah. I don't know how to. What?
I wasn't even talking. Oh.
Well, I heard that light bulb going off all the way over here.
I got one of those old-fashioned
there are like 10 of them.
Noise-making light bulbs. Yeah.
So bright, I can't look directly at Lester.
Wow. Boy, do I feel I got to turn in my podcasting license.
How do you read it then? That's all I could see it as now.
Well, no. Okay. Well, did you have anything else, or do you want to read it?
No, I just don't know how to not see it that way.
Oh my goodness. So for me, I think the book plays this up a little bit more, but as we get closer to the exorcism, the clock begins ticking faster for Regan. Her body is giving up. She is dying. And her needing professional medical attention becomes more and more of a problem.
Right.
And we have Karis agonizing over the decision to stop all of this and get her to a hospital, or to go on with the exorcism. And Howdy picks up on this because of course he does, and he implies that if Regan dies, it'll be Karis's fault. He would be the reason that she died,
right.
And his neglect would be the thing that kills her. Hey, kind of like your neglect killed somebody else in this story, Karis, and that's why she's in here too. So now I take it to mean like, I can't wait for you to do the exorcism, Karis, because it's going to damn you, and then we'll be closer than ever. But now you're putting this other thing out. Like, yeah, of course, like the literal ending of the movie. Oh my God.
Yeah, which ties into one of the we had the reading from the book of Blatty earlier, and Karis says one of the signs, and one of the signs is speaking a language that the person doesn't ordinarily know, but another one of the signs is knowledge of future events or contemporaneous events that you wouldn't have access to otherwise. And so there's a little bit of forecasting that's happening here with Captain Howdy, because Captain Howdy sees perhaps dimly that Captain Howdy will possess Father Karis, but maybe it's prevented from seeing what happens immediately after that. Because otherwise I don't think Captain Howdy would be quite so smug about what happens in this scene here. The other thing that when I remember seeing this for the first time, and for me, hearing that line, it kind of said like, oh, Karis is in a lot more trouble than he realizes, because it's his soul that's at stake here. He is somehow doing this exorcism under these circumstances is going to kill him and is going to trap him within the same kind of hell that Regan is in. And then we get, from the benefit of the book, we get the benefit of hearing all the different voices. The movie doesn't do a great job of explaining, when Karis talks about the 4 distinct personalities, he means Regan and Captain Howdy and the director whose name escapes me right now.
Dennings,
Dennings, and then his mother. And so Karis would become just another lost soul, which, again, we heard from the book reading yesterday. So there's this idea of these lost souls being gathered together. It reminds me of C.S. Lewis and the Screw Tape Letters, where in that work of fiction, he presents the devils tempt souls because the demons feast on human souls and kind of gather them to hell so they can feed off of them. And so there's that kind of idea, like, why would demons possess or be interested in human souls if not for sustenance? There's that idea that kind of runs through fiction in the presentation of demonic possession.
Yeah, that's interesting that you mentioned Screw Tape. So actually, in the 40th anniversary edition, there is a line that I don't know if I like it or not. But when this scene comes around and Karis is getting ready to record, Captain Howdy mentions like, oh, incidentally, did you notice that sometimes I sound like my older brother Screw Tape? Which I thought was a little bit like, it's like 40 years on and we're trying to punch up the dialogue, and it's like, I don't know if we needed that, but it's like, hey, I'm a devil in a book. Do you know who else is a devil in a book?
Postmodernism ruins everything. All these metatextual references.
Yeah, these kids love their Narnia, so let's get on to that. Yeah.
Right. Well, that's the other thing. Like he says, like how novel to attack from the truth, and then he says, surprised by joy, indeed. And I'm like, okay, Blatty, come on.
So if Blatty were writing today, it'd be like, you know who else is in here? Professor Snape.
Yes.
Professor Snape's in here.
Dumbledore died.
Dumbledore died. He's in here.
No, Captain Howdy.
And Khaleesi's in here. And
oh God.
And Walter White's in here. You kids like your Walter White. And Doja Cat.
Yes. See, folks, now you understand why I read the first edition.
Captain Howdy has a hello fellow kids kind of type. Just takes away some of the terror, I have to say. Not Blatty's best move.
Yeah. I do love there's kind of like a spectrum of like how much Howdy is winking at the audience if you go from like, book to movie and like 40th anniversary, and like the 40th anniversary, like I like the book is kind of like in the middle. It's like in the movie, we got no winking at all. Like Howdy is like serious and he's angry and he's just like, who are you? And then in the first edition book, he's just like snarky enough. And then the 40th edition is like, it's just like, it's a little bit too much sauce. It's a little bit too much cheese for me. But yeah. Oh, actually, okay. So Father David, you mentioned something that we have talked about on the show before. And it sounds like you're more in Keenan's camp. And so now I'm curious, the idea that Reagan's soul is at stake for this whole thing, because I was sort of under the impression, and I thought this was Catholic doctrine, and maybe I'm just like misremembering or I'm not understanding fully. So we got a priest on the show, so I'm gonna ask you: is Reagan in danger of being damned from this? Like can Captain Howdy just like snatch her soul, or is that because like I always understood it that like he can do stuff to her body, he can even kill her, but he can't actually like steal her soul away.
And here we touch upon the difference between demonic possessions as they're presented in fiction and demonic possessions as they happen in real life. Because cards on the table, as a Catholic priest, I believe that the devil is real. I believe that exorcism is an efficacious spiritual ritual that does in fact deliver people from demonic oppression and demonic possession. And so it's important to lay out the differences. Now, there are some connective points between Reagan's situation and what has been documented in real exorcism cases. Reagan's little dabbles with occult things like the Ouija board, but that's about all we get in the text of the movie. And I've always felt like that's a little thin. Oftentimes in real cases, there are persistent choices, lifestyles, generational choices, in fact, that will open people up to demonic oppression, which is much more common, which is much more like a kind of deadening of everything spiritually, where you have the kind of the sense of depression, but your mental health is actually fine, but there's a spiritual element to it. And then the much more rare demonic possession, which is where there's a lack of agency, a lack of control. There's some other intelligence at work within the person. So in the fictional case, we're led to believe that the Reagan is somehow in eternal peril because of this demonic possession, and the culpability for Reagan's choices isn't really clear from the text of the movie. There's no choice that she makes. She's presented as this, giggly, innocent 11, 12-year-old girl. So what really could she have done wrong to deserve this? Whereas in other cases, in documented cases in the real world, these are people who suffer from demonic oppression or possession have made choices against moral principles, have made choices to pursue occult practices, to engage in a kind of spiritual relationship with demonic forces, and have manifested acts of the will and choices that open them up to a kind of inverted relationship with spiritual powers that is in a dark mirror to the kind of relationship that, as a Christian, I believe we're meant to have with God. And so it is in that choice of the relationship and that persistent choice to engage with those evil spirits, that's where the danger of the immortal soul comes from, because the ultimate fate of the soul comes down to one's relationship with God. And if you've made friends with the people in hell, well, then that's where you're going to be. And if that's what you've spent your life doing, because you haven't cultivated that relationship of friendship with God. So it's not fair to talk about Reagan's soul, because we don't have enough from the text of the movie. And I don't know if the book gets into any more detail than there is now. I think what Father Marin says later in the movie is much more on the point about the danger that demonic possession presents. It's meant to attack our faith, meant to make us despair. It's not so much Reagan who is in danger. She is, but who is more in danger are all the people around him. See what this does, of course, to Chris and what it drives her to, and how it makes her come unglued from everything, and how it will affect, it will cost Marin his life. It will cost Karis his life. And there's a question of, as to if that cost is paid, is eternal life lost along with the physical life? So for Reagan and for other people in documented cases where there's been demonic oppression or possession, the question of the ultimate fate of the soul depends on what other choices the person make throughout his or her life. For Reagan, I don't know. There's just not enough to judge.
I've always felt like, in this story at least, and I can only speak for this story, I've always felt that Reagan is the tool that Captain Howdy is using to get to Chris, to get to Karis, to get to Marin. In the book, there doesn't seem to be anything beyond, just like playing with the Ouija board, that would seem to indicate that Reagan was like on some kind of diabolical path before Captain Howdy showed up. Yeah. Interesting though. But oh man, yeah, I'm glad that we were able to get that viewpoint from a priest. Thank you very much, Father David. But yeah, so Karis goes back over to that little ottoman. Is that what that thing is? It's like it's the only other piece of furniture here. Probably because if that thing came after you, it wouldn't be much of a threat.
Oh, you say that now.
You ever seen an ottoman?
Come on, ottomany.
I'm afraid of what I'll do to you, Lester. Very afraid.
I may not be so scary alone, but just wait until I get my friends. We'll start a whole empire. Waiting for that. Yeah. Oh. But yeah, so I say it's the only other piece of furniture, but like there's another piece of furniture here. It's a little end table with a drawer that suddenly slides open. Karis looks at it and then at Reagan, and clasping his hands together on his knees, he says, "Did you do that?" Again, in that same humoring tone. Does it seem that way to you guys? Like the subtext is going to like, oh, are you going to try to convince me that you did that? Like, what do you guys think?
Yeah.
I watched this sequence carefully. Karis doesn't see the drawer open. He's looking away at the moment the drawer opens, and when he looks back, the drawer is open. So part of it is Karis trying to get control of the situation back, because something has just happened just out of the corner of his eye. He saw that drawer open, and so that adds that element of ambiguity, like what's happening here exactly. But there's also, now that he's hit record with those big chonky buttons, he's going to anyway. He wants to get something on tape where there's an admission to powers beyond human ken.
Oh, I like that. He just missed it. Oh, that's and it's, of course that's by design, right?
Yeah.
Like just as he was looking away, it's like I could have done that with my hand. One of my hands could be like untied, and I could have moved that. And you have no way of knowing. Oh, wow, I didn't even catch that.
Well, it's interesting in the book that what do you call it? Telekinesis or the ability to move with your mind. In the book, it's presented not as evidence that she is possessed, but the opposite.
Exactly. Yes.
The 70s.
The wildest thing. Yeah.
Psychokinesis. It's a real thing. We're just about to discover it.
Right.
It is. There are unintentionally funny parts in the book where Karis is trying to explain away the fact that it's no. There's nothing supernatural about it. It's not a demon. He's saying this to Chris. It's like, no, there's no demonic forces at all. It's just that your daughter is telekinetic. And I'm like, Karis, and she looks at it. She gives him this incredulous look. She's like, you actually believe in that stuff? And it's like you kind of have to like try not to laugh because like it's such an, well, I don't know. I mean, knowing Blatty, that might be intentionally funny, actually. Yeah. But yeah,
by the time we get Carrie a few years later, Stephen King's Carrie, I mean, that's not seen as some psychosomatic symptom of Carrie.
No.
That's evidence that that's real supernatural powers.
Yeah, right. So now it's like a supernatural thing. Now it's powers, right? Your daughter's not possessed; she's an X-Men. Like,
well, that's pretty cool. I'd love to be. If that's what it takes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now imagining Charles Xavier coming wheeling into Chris's
instead
house.
of Father Mary.
The Exorcist.
The Exorcist. Yeah. There we go, folks. Reagan, I've got this school that I want to show you.
School for possessed youngsters.
Yes. But yeah, okay, like we said, folks, by this time, he's already talked to Chris about psychokinesis as a possibility, which I always found a little funny, just how like out there he's willing to go rather than acknowledge the devil. And part of that, part of what he says is that the church won't accept anything less than genuine possession. So he's being really thorough. But because we know Karras by now, I feel like he's also hiding behind the red tape a little bit. So when he says like the church won't accept these signs, what he's really saying also is I won't accept these signs. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
There's something where Karras wants scientific proof for this. He wants something irrefutable because, as we've established in the text of the movie, he doesn't really buy into the exorcism thing. You'd have to go back to the 1600s in order to find someone who'd be able to do it. And he's so immersed in the scientific mentality where the need for evidence, the need for proof, that he is allowing that to numb him to the possibility that there is something here that is beyond his capacity to fully understand.
Yeah, I think they, I think they taught him too good at those big thinky schools, you know, at Harvard and Bellevue and all those places, right? So he says, did you do that? And Captain Howdy replies, uh-huh. And so very pointedly, Karras pushes the drawer back in and he says, do it again. And now we get a cut to a shot where it almost looks like we're sitting next to Karras on that ottoman. And Captain Howdy says, in time, which again, like we talked about the difference in vocabulary between Howdy and Reagan. And this is something that Karras notes as well early on, right? If this were Reagan, you feel like she'd say, oh, later, or something like that, right? But this added like archaism of in time, right, is chilling in its own way, right? But
because again,
Karras,
it points to how Captain Howdy's in control.
Yes.
Do it again, in time. I will when I choose to, not because you told me to, but because I'm the one in control.
Precisely, right? And he says it again. He says in time, right? In this like gentle, wistful tone, right? Like not like this isn't a problem for me. Like I'm not fighting with you. I'll do it. Don't worry, little boy. You're gonna get your you're gonna get your popsicle after dinner or whatever, right? And then Howdy says, "Mirabile dictu, wouldn't you agree?" Which I did some digging. Father David, you might be able to help me here. Is this a pun? Because in my search, the phrase that seems to pop up more is mirabile visu, which means wonderful to behold, like maybe referring to like a miracle someone has just seen. But Howdy says dictu instead of visu, which I guess means like wonderful to say or to relate. So I took it as like he's using the phrase wonderful to behold, but he changes it and he makes it a pun, saying it's wonderful to chat with you, Karras.
Well, you could use mirabile dictu as a way to talk about something that is just wonderful to relate, like Lester and Keenan are doing this podcast about The Exorcist, and mirabile dictu, they got a priest to come on the show. So it's like we won't believe this. Isn't this wonderful to hear, or wonderful for you to hear, wonderful for me to say? So its use here, I think, is part of the 4D chess of Captain Howdy, because Captain Howdy knows what Karras is looking for in this conversation, because as we saw from the book, there's some mind reading that Captain Howdy is able to do. So I think that can go pretty deep past surface thoughts. And so the demon knows that Karras is looking for evidence of foreign languages. So I think this is an intentional misuse of Latin. That Captain Howdy is using a Latin phrase it doesn't quite work in context. It should be Mirabile visu, but it says Mirabile dictu, which is a similar but different Latin phrase. So it again introduces the ambiguity, like, okay, is this actually a demonic possession where she's speaking a language she doesn't know? Or is this just a possessed girl kind of doing AI hallucination kind of stuff where she is dredging up Latin phrases kind of deep down in her psyche that she's heard and she doesn't quite understand.
Right. Maybe she heard this at church or something like that.
Right. Yeah. Or she heard one of her mother's very fancy dinner guests say, because you got a lot of very educated people coming through Chris's house all the time, and they seem like the pretentious kind of people who would just drop Latin phrases and not quite know what they mean.
Yeah, actually, yeah. I can see that astronaut being like, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Very interesting. Okay. I hadn't thought of it that way. Thank you, Father David. And so, Karis takes this as a sign to start recording. Remember, he's trying to get proof, like Father David said, of the difference of speaking in a foreign language, but also the difference of like speaking patterns, right? So the difference from like how Reagan would talk versus how Howdy is talking, right? So he's trying to get both of those. And we cut to a close-up of this machine as he clunks down the record button.
Oh, I love that record button. It makes me so happy. It's so chonky. There's so much action on that button.
This is some like 70s ASMR. It's right.
I love it.
Yeah,
but he's very strong. We must remember. He's
only a boxer could.
Only a boxer.
That's what his training was for. Was to get that thing down. But we get a close up of this machine as he clunks it down, just in time to catch Reagan speaking in Latin again. And she says, "Ego te absolvo." What do we make of this, guys?
Like I said before, I think this is part of Captain Howdy's strategy to play with Karis. Because "Ego te absolvo" comes from the Latin form of the prayer of absolution, which is the prayer the priest says in the Catholic sacrament of penance, known as confession. After the person in the confessional verbalizes all of his or her sins, the priest will pronounce the forgiveness of sin and act with the authority of Christ. And the church teaches that when a priest says the words of absolution, it is Jesus speaking through the priest, because only God can forgive sins. And therefore, there is a specific formula that the church tells her priests to use so that there is this consistency in every experience of confession. And the Latin form begins with "Ego te absolvo," I absolve you. Ego, I. Te is the direct object, you, and absolvo for the verb. And that is a Latin phrase that has still some cultural cachet. It's less so now because we now celebrate the sacrament of confession in the vernacular, and the prayer of absolution is likewise now said in whatever the spoken language of the culture is. But if you hear someone, perhaps more in nerdy seminary circles amongst my students making this joke, they say "Ego te absolvo," it's kind of a shorthand way of saying like "I forgive you."
Right.
Here with Captain Howdy, I think he's playing this game like, okay, is this actually evidence of a language that Reagan doesn't know, or is she a delusional little girl parroting back things that she has heard?
Right. Yes.
It's a common enough Latin phrase that it wouldn't be out of bounds for her to have picked up, I suppose.
Yeah. I am so glad you said that, Father David. Yes, that was kind of like my suspicion. I've not attended a confession or a mass in Latin, and I wanted to ask you. So, like, this would be something that a regular churchgoer would hear, even if they're not like whether or not they speak a lick of Latin. Like they might, like, if they go to church regularly, they might hear in the same way that you might hear "In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti." You might hear "Ego te absolvo" like all the time if you're a regular churchgoer.
They're often enough, especially if you were a frequent penitent. If you went to the sacrament of confession, you would hear the priest "Ego te absolvo," and it might be that hurried and rushed because as one who hears confessions, it can be a long time in the box, and you get tired, and you just like find your edges. Where can I shave this down? But that would be very similar. I mean, same thing with like "Dominus vobiscum" and "Et cum spiritu tuo," which were common phrases said during the course of the Mass. So I think it's easy for Karis, especially for Karis as a priest, right? As one who would have been trained probably to hear confessions and give the prayer of absolution then in Latin.
Right.
He would be very familiar with that phrase. So that would sound very familiar to him. And that's, again, part of the ambiguity that Captain Howdy's playing on. It'd be one thing for Reagan to quote Cicero in the original Latin, which would definitely, okay, what's that all about? Because that's not something you come across. Ego te absolvo is something Karras knows, like his phone number, that is so familiar to him. It's like, I can't tell if that's unique or not.
Right. Oh, okay. I love this. Thank you. Thank you for, confirming my hunch, Father David. So not only do we have like kind of the irony of a demon forgiving a priest, but then we also have this beginning of what I think is, I think this is like maybe the first of several teases that Captain Howdy does to Karras, right? Because the next thing that happens here, Karras says, quod nomen mihi est, right? What is my name? And, he called her bluff, right? He's like, okay, so you speak Latin. Let's go. What is my name? And Howdy counters that with, bonjour. So he has switched to French. Interesting that bonjour is also one of those phrases that, everybody kind of knows, regardless of whether or not they speak French, right?
Yeah.
So we got
on Family Feud, they know it. If they were like, what's a French word you say in English?
Yes.
Like,
right?
Bonjour.
Yeah. So
show me bonjour.
So show me bonjour, right?
Number 3. So
Captain
Howdy, 1 or 2.
Yeah. So Captain Howdy is winning at Family Feud right now, right? Show me foreign phrases that everybody knows, right? So far, all of these phrases that Howdy has used are things that a person who only knows English would be able to pick up on, right? Regardless of whether or not they speak French or Latin, right? But Karras is insistent. He repeats quod nomen mihi est, and we can see in his face that he is, well. What do we see in his face, guys? Like, I feel like it changes for me each time I watch it. Like, he's got a little smirk going on, but also I sense some anger. Like, what do we make of this? Like, what's up here?
He's trying to gain control back, and he's trying to. All right, now he thinks he has an in. He's going to play to the delusion, because I think at this point, Karras still is operating under the assumption that this is a psychological condition. And not a spiritual one, which in a way is what the church would want a priest to operate with in this kind of investigation phase.
Right.
I think Karras' problem is on a personal level, he's wrestling with his faith. So he's not being as careful as I would encourage my brother priest to be in this kind of situation. He's trying to get control back and engage this patient on a level that he thinks he can establish with, because the patient, again, it's that responsiveness of the psychiatrist, the therapist. The patient led with Latin. I will therefore follow where the patient goes.
Yes.
But now the patient has jumped to bonjour.
To me, it almost looks like maybe he started kind of light, like, okay, like you say, Father David, it's like, I'm playing along, let's speak some Latin. And when she doesn't play along, you see this smirk like, see, like, you can't actually speak any languages. Like, see, I tricked you into proving it to yourself. And yet I'm also sensing this frustration.
Yeah.
It's the same as when he jokingly asked her to make the straps disappear. There's this look like deep in his eyes. He wants to see a sign. He wants to see another miracle. And the way he says quod nomen mihi est, again, it's like, come on, stop kidding around. Like, but he's like, it's like you started with Latin. Let's go. Like, and now you give me bonjour. Stop teasing me.
Right. I'm trying to play your game, and we keep adding another game, and it's always mousetrap every single
it's always mousetrap.
And it's not even mousetrap. You just want to build the big contraption and set it all off. You don't actually want to play the game.
Yes. Everything's everything's mousetrap. But so then, so he says, quod nomen mihi est, to which Captain Howdy then replies, la plume de ma tante, and laughs. Now, I have been waiting to talk about this. Keenan, Father David, I got stuff to say, but I want to check in. I want to check in with you guys first. Lester has something to say. Right? Mirabile dictu.
There you go. Nice.
Yeah, there we go. But okay, guys, what is going on here? What is Captain Howdy even doing here with La Plume de ma tante?
Well, I did look that up, so I don't know if...
Okay. Well, yeah, no. Yeah, go ahead.
But that apparently is famous for students of this time period who were learning French, that they would have to learn this phrase, even though it is pretty inapplicable when you're speaking in French, because it is this term that that the textbook would want you to know, because apparently it has 3 different uses of the way that the A vowel is pronounced, but that you would never have to use that in real life.
Yes. Oh, man.
Interesting.
when I caught this, oh yeah, Father David, how about you?
Well, I was able to pick up La Plume, which is like, okay, that's like pen or like feather or, like nom de plume, like, your writing name. Like, okay, that's the quill. And then like ma tante, like, I think that's aunt. Like my aunt's quill. Like I only knew that because I came across a dumb TikTok video about how the sound of the word ton in French applies to so many different words. And so you can create this kind of nonsense sentence using the same sound in French.
Yes.
And ton is the word for uncle and tante is the word for aunt. Anyway, welcome to my brain. But that was like, okay, so this is like one of those, my mother studied French very thoroughly in college and was fluent. I think she would say she's just not practiced it enough now, but she remembers these really dumb sentences that she would have to say in order to demonstrate competency in vocabulary and grammatical forms. Like something like "my feet are like two boats" was one of the sentences that she would always delight in repeating because it's so silly. Why would you ever need to say that?
Right. I think that that nowadays, or at least, we're out in the West, right? So I'm in Las Vegas and Lester's out in Los Angeles. So a lot of our students, I think, grow up learning Spanish as their extracurricular language, right? So the more common things, so this phrase might be the equivalent of like Maria's at the library, right?
¿Dónde está el baño?
Yes. So that's useful.
That is useful.
Want to know where the baño is. But yeah, how often will you have to say that my friend Maria is at the library? Right.
Yeah. You have to have a friend Maria. Right. Otherwise, you're screwed.
Right.
Will you be my friend? It's so that I can say this Spanish phrase.
Are we like Spanish phrase friends, or are we like real friends?
Go to the what? Last time I was at the library. But no, okay, I'm so glad you guys brought that up, guys. As a language teacher, I love this so much. This is so dumb, but so clever at the same time. It's like you were saying before, Keenan. Like Karis and Howdy are playing chess. And right now, it looks like Captain Howdy just flipped the board and ate some of the pieces. But he actually made the best move possible. And even if Karis caught it on one level, he missed it on two other levels.
Right.
So, okay, I want to break it down. So we know that Le Plume de ma tante, right? It means the pen of my aunt, right? Utter nonsense. What pen? Whose aunt, right? It makes absolutely no sense. Right. And even though it is grammatically correct, it is a sentence that you would never actually use in real life, right? And like you guys picked up on, where do we find lots of grammatically correct sentences that we would almost never use in real life, right?
In school.
In text, in school, in language textbooks, right? These are filled with like useless but grammatically complex and correct sentences which only ever exist in order to teach you certain words or grammar points, right? And oftentimes, they will pull from previous lessons, or they would try to cram in as many different categories as they can into one phrase. So like in one sentence, you'll have like a day of the week and a food and a family member and a color. So it's very economical from a teaching standpoint, but it makes for sentences that you would never use, right? My stepfather's pet duck has a birthday in July. Right?
Doesn't everybody's?
Yeah, right, exactly. Right? And this sentence, Le Plume de ma tante, right? It does the same thing, right? What does this one sentence teach us? It teaches us about family members, right? My aunt. It teaches us about household objects, right? A pen. And then it combines them, right? This is my aunt. This is a pen. And then they probably already learned how to say those things. And so now this is my aunt's pen, right? The pen of my aunt, right? So what Howdy is doing here, right? He teases Karis with a little bit of Latin, right? And then he regresses to bonjour, all of which so far have been phrases that you might hear all the time, even if you don't speak those languages, right? Like ciao or sayonara, right? And then finally, he hits him with a well-known beginner French textbook phrase, La Plume de ma tante, right? But there is another level to this. La Plume de ma tante was also the name of a Broadway musical, right? Which was popular when Blatty was writing the novel.
Oh,
yeah. So actually, okay, Father David, I'm going to have you do this with me for context. We're gonna bring this back. We're gonna bring this into 2023. Okay.
Oh boy.
We're gonna do this scene, right? And so I'll be Captain Howdy, and then you be Father Karis.
All right.
Okay.
You speak Latin.
Ego te absolvo.
Quod nomen mihi est.
Bonjour.
Quod nomen mihi est.
Les Miserables. That's exactly what he's doing. He's quoting. He's like, yeah, I speak French. Baguette.
One day more.
So and there's one more level to this. Remember I said these textbook sentences are designed to teach you like a certain grammar point, right? Like past tense, present tense, plural, singular, right? First person, third person. What structure does Le Plume de ma Tante teach us?
The possessive?
Possession.
Oh, man. Oh, boy.
Excellent.
That's
we're going to
really
chase Father David away.
Oh, man. No, I'm just deeply enjoying this on an intellectual level that surpasses the capacity for laughter.
Oh, intellectual has nothing to do with this.
Oh, man. That's really
all right.
good.
Thank you guys for indulging me. I was way too proud of that. I figured out all that out by myself. But actually, okay, yeah, I love this little exchange because you have all of this, like this multi-layered joke. But what Howdy is saying with the joke is, look, buddy, I know what you're doing. I know you're looking for proof, and that's your problem. You can't have faith without proof. So I'm going to mess with you. I'm going to give you just enough, and then I'm going to take it back. And you're never going to learn. You're never going to make that leap. I know you, Karis, right?
Right.
Yeah. And so now Karis asks, how long are you planning to stay in Reagan? And Howdy replies, until she rots and lies stinking in the earth, right? He gets a little aggressive here. And Karis doesn't respond to this, or at least he doesn't show a response. Instead, he takes something out of his coat pocket. We close up on it and we can see that it's a little bottle, a little vial of something. We cut back to Captain Howdy / Reagan looking very concerned as he says, "What's that?" But the answer to that question lies in our next minute. For now, we have reached the end. Keenan, Father David, is there anything else we want to talk about in this minute?
No, I think we got it.
The only thing I would add, just because of what Captain Howdy says in response to Damien's last question there, how long are you planning to stay in Reagan? I think there's a way in which Captain Howdy is trying to play on Karis's own aversions to things, because Karis is so uncomfortable in Bellevue because he's surrounded by that stink. He's surrounded by that rot, by that kind of physical illness and sickness. And Karis is an athlete. He's a man of the body. He trains hard. He values physical health. And so what's going to be more upsetting to Karis? Not something spiritual, but something physical until she rots and lies stinking in the earth. That's the worst thing possible for a man like Karis.
Ooh, I like that. Oh, I mean, I don't like that.
It's on tape. You know we got it.
No. There you go, folks. You heard it. Lester likes rotting bodies. Yeah. No, thank you for that insight, Father David.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
All right, folks. This has been another excellent Exorcist Minute. I've been Lester Ryan Clark. You can reach me on all the socials as Lester Ryan Clark.
And I've been Keenan Diaz. You can find me on Instagram and Letterboxd as Howdy Keenan.
And I've been Father David Mowry. You can also find me on Letterboxd as Venerable Bede.
Awesome. And we got our listener group, Compelling Conversations. Go check that out and request to join, and we'll let you in here with us. Thank you so much to everyone who's shared the show by word of mouth on social media. And a big thank you to everyone who has given us a 5-star ratings on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you listen to our show. We really appreciate it. That's going to help our little podcast grow and find more cool people like you. Okay. Keenan, Father David, are you thinking what I'm thinking?
I think I am, Lester.
Oh, I think I am too.
Folks, until next time.
The power of grammar compels you.